Welcome back, fight fans. We're back with some more BLÜ-FC. We've got UFC Vegas 58. That was this last Saturday, of course. And we're actually going to be doing some Battlefield Fight League, some BFL. That's from Vancouver. And that would be from Thursday, last Thursday. And then of course we've got the Ultimate Fighter, the second last episode of the season. And then we finally got this week's stuff. That's UFC Long Island. Wow, that's a lot to go through. So we'll start off right away. I'll try and make it maybe a little quicker than normal, hopefully. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. So we'll start off with the prelims, of course, from UFC Vegas 58. That was Fiziev and RDA, the Battle of the Rafaels. So the first prelim that I'm going to talk about, that was actually the first prelim that I talked about last time. Ronnie Lawrence, Said Yakud Kakramanov. Knew this was going to be close. I was leaning towards Lawrence because of what I had seen in the tape, but I knew it was going to be close. I knew it could have gone either way. So after a couple of decent strikes from both guys, then they started to do their grappling, and we knew that's what this was going to happen. I mean, they're both pretty good at grappling, so well, actually, normally that means there's a lot of striking, but you never know with this kind of thing. Anyway, Lawrence tried it first, doing some pretty good work, but it ended up being Kakramanov who grabbed the dominant position first, and that really set the tone for the rest of the fight, I would say. For the rest of the round, it was all Kakramanov smothering Ronnie with his wrestling, busting him open with the ground and pound. After the round was done, Ronnie's eye was already almost completely shut. It was swelling up pretty bad. Not letting the opening round stop him, Lawrence did try to come in with some combos to open the round. Sadly for him, though, the wrestling started from Said Yakub, which honestly I was actually a little bit surprised by. Thought Lawrence was going to have the better of the wrestling. They said that on the broadcast too, on UFC as well. So wasn't just me. Pretty much everybody thought that Lawrence would have the wrestling advantage. I mean, I thought it was definitely going to be close, but he definitely did seem to be like a better wrestler on the in the other fights, let's say. Lawrence Manley finally did manage to get up and actually landed a takedown of his own, but that really only lasted a couple seconds. Kakramanov got back up right away, and in the last round, Kakramanov just kept that going, picked Lawrence up, slammed him into the ground. That's got to be the most humiliating thing that could possibly happen to you in a fight, I would say, just getting brutally slammed into the mat. Considering the fact that Ronnie Lawrence had never been taken down, by the way, that was actually the main thing that was convincing me and pretty much every other analyst to think that Lawrence was the one going to be dominating the wrestling here, because he had never even been taken down in the UFC before this fight. Can't say that anymore, clearly. Taken down, I don't even, actually, yeah, I did say at the end. Ended up being 10 takedowns for 10 minutes of control time. 10 takedowns after not being taken down at all, not even once in the UFC. So obviously, amazing performance by Kakramanov there. Unanimous decision win. Then we saw Kennedy Nzechukwu, Carl Robertson. This, of course, was one of the much closer ones. It was pretty much dead even in the odds, and it's why I didn't talk about it on the broadcast last week, because they're so close and it wasn't really high profile names in there, so I left that one alone. Of course, Nzechukwu, very much the larger fighter. He's pretty much always going to be the longest guy. He is, I think it's something like an 83-inch reach or something like that. I think it's like the third longest reach in the UFC or something like that. So yeah, that's always going to be a thing for him. Obviously, Robertson trying to avoid that, working for the takedowns. Sadly, and this is why I actually ended up picking Nzechukwu in my bets and on Tapology on that, because it's really hard to take down somebody that is that tall if they have any kind of having trouble breathing for some reason. If they have any kind of takedown defense, it is very hard to take somebody down that is that tall. And it actually helps Nzechukwu grab a takedown himself, which is definitely not something I would say most people expected. I didn't expect it, that's for sure. Like most people, definitely thought it was going to be some striking. I mean, use that length. He's got decent striking too. So that made a lot of sense. But instead, he had a very grappling heavy fight here. The whole fight, really. Took the back of Robertson in the first round there, sunk in a pretty dangerous-ish rear naked choke there. Robertson did get out of it, but was still in deep trouble there. Nzechukwu kept putting all of his weight on him. That's a lot of weight too. And with the height, of course, I mean, it's not something you want on top of you. Working for submissions, chipping at him with the ground and pound there. That was all in the first round. The second round, Robertson did actually land some hard, pretty huge combos, but Nzechukwu, that didn't stop him at all. Just walked right through it, really. Dragged Carl to the ground. Again, moving on with that the grappling theme, of course, for the game plan, I should say, for him in this one. Then really started focusing on that ground and pound, really tried to get a TKO. That was the second round, so clear dominant second round there for Nzechukwu. Then Robertson obviously knew he needed a finish in the final round. Came in with some heavy strikes, but of course Nzechukwu just walked right through that once again and just took him down right away. Had a couple more minutes of ground control, landed some pretty significant stuff there. Then finally landed a bunch of elbows and finally finished it off there. I wanted the extra points for picking a decision on this one, but you know what? We'll take we'll take the win with the third round TKO. Very good though. Amazing for Nzechukwu. He hasn't really been doing all that well, so it was kind of nice to see somebody that's that good actually finally succeed for once. The next one, David Onama, Garrett Armfield, most lopsided one in the odds by far, wasn't even close. I think when I saw it, I think Onama was at minus 1100 against Armfield. I looked at the tape and I was like, it's a lot closer than they're making it out to be with the odds. But you still kind of have to agree that Onama, had the clear edge and was going to be winning that fight. Both of them started to go for some striking early. It was Onama that did grab that momentum first, pinned Armfield along the fence. And even though he was the huge underdog, and like I said, it was a lot closer than the odds made it out to be, of course, and you kind of have to expect that, especially when Onama hasn't done a huge amount in the UFC himself. You can't say that it's that one-sided. Armfield actually found himself on top when they hit the canvas. Not only that, when they got back up, he was actually landing some pretty heavy combos there on Onama. And Onama closed the round out with some massive shots. But you know what? I actually had it for Armfield in the opening round. And they also said that on the broadcast. So I know I wasn't the only one out there who was thinking it. But yeah, I actually gave the opening round to Armfield there. It was close, but yeah. But I knew Onama was going to come back into it. I mean, especially when you're that big of a favorite, you're that experienced, and you're that good, you kind of figure they're going to come back into it pretty hard. Once again, they did come back into it heavy with the striking to open the round. Armfield went for a takedown from there. But being that Onama is so strong, I mean, he's huge. He's so strong for the division. Stole the momentum, landed a takedown himself, and Onama locked in a very, very deep submission that had Armfield actually defending for almost a whole minute. I mean, just trying to do anything to get him off. Eventually couldn't defend himself anymore. Onama got a fantastic second round submission. So, and that also ended up being, well, it was the only submission of the night, but it was my submission of the night. for the blue bonus there. Next up, it was Antonina Shevchenko and Courtney Casey. We were also supposed to see um, Nina Nunes and I'm struggling to remember the name. I didn't write it down because I had to delete it because it was canceled. Oh yeah, Calvillo. I believe it was Calvillo. So we were supposed to see Calvillo and Nunes. For some reason that was canceled. I don't know if we ever found out why. I think it might have been because oh yeah, right. I think one of them tested positive for COVID, I believe. So we didn't get to see that one, but we did get to see this one, which was Shevchenko and Courtney Casey. And again, knew this was going to be pretty close. I had Shevchenko going into it because, well, she's a world champion kickboxer and Courtney Casey is also a striker. So you usually pick the person with a much better striking background. A lot closer than I thought it was. I mean, knew it was going to be close. It's a women's fight. You don't have somebody, a huge standout on either side. They're both pretty similar. So you can kind of figure it's going to be a really close fight. Especially recently with all the judges' cards. I mean, we've been seeing some crazy stuff like that a lot. So it made sense that we were going to see the same thing here. Both of them pretty slow to start, only throwing out the occasional strike here and there. After about 4 or so minutes of that, so really basically near the end of the opening round, the first moment came. Casey jumped in with a big shot. Shevchenko actually used that to take Casey down, close the first round on top. So that was kind of the only big moment. So maybe kind of had to give Shevchenko that one. Second round, pretty much the same. Not much action on either side. This time it was Shevchenko who was landing more often, but Casey was landing the better shots and grabbed a bit of control time along the fence. So to me, that was enough to give Casey the round. I mean, like I said, neither one of them did a whole lot, but because Casey had the control time and maybe was a little more active, had to give her the round. So I had it at 1-1 at that point. Then what did we have here? I lost myself in my notes here. Unlike the other rounds, the third round, both of them turned up the heat in the final round, probably because they knew how close it was. I mean, you kind of have to realize at that point how close it is. So makes sense. Much like the second round, though, Casey was really the one pushing the pace, pressured Shevchenko with her strikes, ended up taking her down, lit her up with some ground and pound there. And with a couple more late takedowns after that, pretty clear that Casey won the final round. So I thought it was pretty clear for me that it was 29-28 for Courtney Casey. I should probably put the mic up a little bit. I thought it was pretty clear 29-28 for Casey. It was close. And like I said, I had Shevchenko. I don't, people say, oh, like you end up being kind of biased because of how you make, you make the pick and you want that pick to win. That's not what I do here. That's not what I do at all. I make my picks, forget about that, watch the fights, and judge them exactly how I see them. And this was one of those cases where I'm obviously happy that I won the bet that, Shevchenko did win, but, really didn't think that she won the fight. I thought Casey won that pretty clearly. So, and I'd rather, and I've said this before, I would much rather lose and have the right person win than win and be like, wow, that was horrible, because that you're going to end up on the other side of it eventually if it keeps happening. So, momentary happiness and then the realization that it can happen to you again at any moment. So, didn't really make much sense. Oh yeah, that's right. I'll go into the scores too. Two of them had it 29-28 for Shevchenko. One of them had it 29-28 like we did. For Casey, split decision. I mean, the first round makes sense, Shevchenko. Second round, just a little bit extra from Casey. So I don't know. I mean, again, it was close enough that maybe, but still, to me, I thought it was pretty clear. And I think a lot of other people were thinking it was pretty clear too. I always look on Twitter after these ones, and there was a lot of people saying that after that. Then we had Cody Brundage and Trayshawn Gore. This was actually one of my underdog picks. I wasn't really sure why Gore was the favorite. Maybe it's just the name because he was on The Ultimate Fighter last year. But honestly, I wasn't impressed at all because I mean, I didn't see the Ultimate Fighter on last season. I did not watch most of the fights because I couldn't. It wasn't on TV. So, and I didn't have Fight Pass back then, so I couldn't watch it. But I did see Gore fight in against Battle. That's right. He fought Battle. And you know what? Really wasn't all that impressed. I mean, I'm not even wholly like fully that impressed by Battle, and Gore still didn't even really do much of anything there. So I mean, when you've got somebody with the amount of experience of Brundage, who has fought way bigger guys size wise and come out the other side of it, there's nothing that Gore could have done to win this fight in my mind. So I had Brundage as a pick, but of course, again, I didn't really want to talk about it too much last time because, you know, still a little bit unpredictable. But again, on Tapology and in my bets, that was my pick. Anyway, that aside, Brundage decided to grab that momentum early, ran straight at Gore. Pretty smart because Gore wasn't really advancing all that much against Battle either. Not really much of a pressure fighter. Is still young in his career, though. Let's just say that. It's not that he's terrible. I mean, his record is literally what, like 3-2 right now, 3-3 or something like that. So he's just starting. Like, let's be honest here. He should not be at this level. That's really all it is. Can he come back into that level? Yes, but he's not there yet. And we really noticed that in this one especially. Anyway, having trouble taking him down because of the size, of course, but he was still shutting down all of the offense. After separating, it was then Gore who started to lead the offense a little bit, started to walk Brundage down, landed some fairly heavy shots, but just as it looked like Gore was kind of cruising ahead on the cards because he was kind of doing a little bit better there, Brundage landed a huge counter shot, put Gore on his back, Gore on his back. And then all Brundage had to do from there, couple of follow-up shots, and that was it for the first round TKO. So fantastic win for Cody Brundage. Never doubted you, because again, I put money on you. We cashed in on the underdog again. There we go. Main card: Michael Johnson, Jamie Mullarkey. I mean, I knew it was going to be kind of close. I said this last time, but I thought that, especially because of the power, Mullarkey was going to kind of run away with this eventually. So I even had Mullarkey by finish. As expected, a lot of striking right away, of course. I mean, we knew that's exactly what was going to happen between these two guys. Both of them were landing some pretty good shots, but it was pretty obvious that Mullarkey was kind of edging ahead with the power and his kicks. Then out of nowhere, Johnson landed a big one, dropped Mullarkey, jumped on him with some pretty heavy ground and pound, actually threatened a submission there too, but Mullarkey managed to recover and get back to his striking, I should say. Then it was Mullarkey that dropped Johnson with a huge shot, threatened a finish of his own. And it's really tough to score a round like that. But personally, you know, when you think about it more, you should really go with the person who did it last, who got the last knockdown. Because really, you know, if you just think about it, even for like 30 seconds, you know, yes, Johnson got the first knockdown, but Mullarkey recovered from there, wasn't even interrupted by a round, completely recovered from that, and got a knockdown of his own. That, to me, solidifies the round for Mullarkey. You know, like, all you got to do is really think about it like that. It makes a lot of sense. Mullarkey wins that round. Second round here. Where are we? Where is it here? Yeah. Neither guy really slowed down at all. By the way, this ended up, of course, being fight of the night. I mean, it was just insane the whole way through. second round. Wild combos from both guys, trying to land something big, of course. As the round went on, though, pretty clear that Mullarkey was getting into his rhythm, started to land massive knees and elbows, punches that busted open Johnson. And I mean, that was a pretty clear round for Mullarkey there. So I don't really see how you could have scored it any other way. I mean, like I said, when you think about it in that kind of way, where Johnson was knocked down last and Mullarkey held the momentum. He did the most damage later in the round. You have to score it for Mullarkey in the first round. So to me, that's already 2 rounds up. And I'm saying all this because, of course, we know. I mean, you can tell, even if you don't know, that this is going to be going to a decision, and this goes to a split decision. So I'm telling you right now, all out of everything, there's really no other way to score those first 2 rounds because, again, Mullarkey gets the later takedown, the later knockdown. It just makes sense. So 2 rounds to nothing, I think fairly clearly for Mullarkey. Johnson came in hard the final round, obviously trying to get something going. Johnson started to land some bigger shots to stumble Mullarkey. In response, Mullarkey then shot in for the takedown, couldn't quite notch one. And then we had a absolutely insane flurry to end the fight there. And really, I mean, I wrote it down here. It was anybody's guess on the judges' cards because we know this can go either way. And we did see that. It was a split decision, like I said. But it seemed at the very least that we were going to see 29-28 for Mullarkey. If you think about it properly and really kind of score it like that, the way it makes the most amount of sense. So yeah, I had it 29-28 for Mullarkey. But again, like with judging being the way it is, I could have seen it going the other way. But anyway, so yeah, 2 of them had it 29-28 for Mullarkey. One of them had it 29-28 for Johnson. Yes, that was. Yeah, I don't know. Like, again, I see where they're coming from, but if you really think it through and score it the most obvious way, which would be giving it to the person who got the last knockdown in the first round, there's no other way you could have scored that fight other than either 29-28 or maybe even 30-27. I don't really remember completely who I thought won the last round. I didn't write it down, but I would probably assume that it was Johnson because I had it 29-28. So makes sense. Anyway, that aside, let's get out of that. Next one, Ayman Zahabi and Ricky Turcios. This was actually another one that I had, another underdog that I had. I had Zahabi going into this. Really didn't want to do this on the last broadcast because, because I like Turcios and I didn't want to seem like, oh, I'm just, shitting all over Turcios for no reason. But honestly, I wasn't really all that impressed with how he fought last time. And, he fought really well, but I knew how good Zahabi was compared to him, and the styles just didn't match up at all in favor of Turcios. So I really thought Zahabi was going to win. Again, we cashed in on that. Yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's just like, I don't want to shit all over, of course, the Ultimate Fighter, but the fighters from last season specifically was not really all that impressed compared to what we've seen in other seasons. I don't know. That's all I'm saying. Again, I like them. I like Turcios. He's a great guy, nice guy, hilarious with the karaoke, and even the way he fights is very interesting to watch. But he's not quite there yet, and he could be there, but he's not quite there yet. And we found that out for sure this time. Turcios took actually a patient approach to this to open the fight, and maybe that's a little bit as to why he was having problems there. But Zahabi, which is why I picked Zahabi, because I knew you can't rush in on Zahabi like that, because that's exactly what he wants you to do. So you can't do that, which is exactly why, like I said, the styles didn't match up. Anyway, Not much action in the first couple minutes. Zahabi had the first big moment though, landed a heavy combo that caught Tercios a bit. And then he had his second moment, landed a heavy low kick, swept out Ricky's legs momentarily there, knees on the canvas, like legs gone. It was pretty close, but made sense again to score at Zahabi because of the bigger moments there. So first round made sense, Zahabi. Second round, pretty close again, but Tercios was landing more strikes this time. Zahabi started to land more as the round went on, which kind of made the scores a little bit more complicated. Tercios didn't necessarily land that much, but it's the way that he fights with the antics, like the feints and the sounds and all that, and everything, just everything that he's doing. It tricks you into thinking that he's striking more than he actually was, because I didn't think he was winning because I always pay attention to what actually lands. That's what I look at. And I don't think that's what some people do. Like, they look at what's being either just thrown, or they get tricked by all that noise and stuff. I wasn't being tricked, so I knew that if the judges were scoring this properly, Zahabi would be winning for sure. Because then if you looked at the numbers too, which of course the judges don't have access to, but if you would have looked at them, you would have known too, Zahabi was clearly ahead in the strikes. He was just tricking people into thinking that he was ahead, that Tercios was ahead. Anyway, so got a little more interesting there. Tercios kicked it up a notch in the final round, got even more active, but it was weird though, because then again, he only landed about half as many strikes as Zahabi, but he threw twice as much as him, but still seemed to be making this a close fight on the cards. So I mean, in terms of damage and then also the numbers too, it was pretty obvious that Zahabi was winning. But when you see that, when you're watching it and you don't have access to those numbers, especially in person, I would imagine it would be even harder. You can trick people like that. So I wasn't sure what the scores were going to be like when they were read out. I had it probably 29-28 for Zahabi, but again, you can be tricked really easily by that kind of strategy. In the end, though, the judges did agree with me. They had it 29-28 Zahabi. So, yeah. But it's tricky. It's a tricky kind of strategy that Tercios has, which, again, I respect him. He's talented, but that stuff just is not going to work on a super high level like this. Next up, it was Jared Vanderaa. Oh my God. Jared Vanderaa and Chase Sherman. Oh my goodness. What a shit show. I had Vanderaa by decision going into this. Really didn't think either one of them had the power to finish either guy. And then I don't think anybody's really impressed at all with Sherman, or even Vanderaa for that matter. But with the size advantage, I had Vanderaa on this one, and he can also grapple too. So there was that too. Yeah, weird one. So again, Vanderaa by decision is what I had. Sherman landed the first big strike as expected. Didn't affect Vanderaa at all. Like literally not even a little bit. Vanderaa had a clear power advantage, but Sherman with the speed advantage was just getting there first, which made sense, and I knew that was going to happen, but also figured Vanderaa was probably going to start grappling and maybe land just a couple of his own to then stumble Sherman. Anyway, getting picked apart the whole round, Vanderaa finally landed a big one that landed Sherman, that stumbled Sherman a bit. So there you go. That's exactly what we were expecting. But that probably wasn't enough to go ahead on the cards in that round. Kind of makes sense there. Because Sherman obviously had all the extra activity. And yes, Vanderaa landed a big one, but it's only one. It doesn't matter that much. So yeah, I had the first round for Sherman. The second round, Vanderaa started to finally lead some of the action, landed some pretty heavy kicks and combos, actually. Then it was Sherman who started to pick up the pace a bit. And I did give that round to Vanderaa. He did have the extra damage in it. But I will say, though, it was so dead even that I could have seen, honestly, any combination of scores at that point, but I had it 1-1. That in my mind, that's kind of what I had it at. Vandera, like I said, was taking it pretty easy at the end of the second round there. Really started to push it in the final round. Landed some bombs to counter Sherman every single time he walked in. So really looked like he was definitely going to be taking that final round. And like I said, win the decision 29-28, which is exactly what I was thinking was going to happen. But after getting picked apart, Sherman turned the tables, and that was it. Vandera, I mean, he hit him with some huge combos and just let loose combo after combo. Finally dropped Vandera and got a very late TKO finish. I think there was only like 2 minutes left or something like that. Ah, you know, like when you pick Vandera, when you pick one fighter to win by decision, they're winning the decision, and then they get finished with 2 minutes left. I mean, wow. Wow. Not only that, by the way, but that was actually one of my picks. One of my picks for just the bets in general. I said these two guys, oh yeah, that's what it was. It ended up being 3 minutes left because I said it should be over 2.5. Yeah, over 2.5. That was the underdog pick, but it made the most sense. So underdog, I went with the over 2.5, and what happened? 3 minutes left in the fight. 3 minutes left. That is 30 seconds away from being the over 2.5. I mean, what are you gonna do with that? What are you gonna do with that? So not only did I lose Vandera by decision and Vandera and the over two, and I also lost the over 2.5 there too. Brutal by 30 seconds. Anyway, after that, Saeed Nurmagomedov, Douglas Silva to Andrade. I specifically said how close this was because I knew how good Andrade was. But I did say that I figured Saeed was going to get a finish only because he's just that good. And I figured as Andrade maybe got a little more tired as it went on, that he was probably going to be getting, did I say, I think I said a submission win. Yeah, get a finish on the ground there. So it was actually Silva who grabbed the momentum early, clinched up with Saeed, pinned him along the fence with brute strength because he is that big. After an explosive throw, Saeed managed to get him off, returned to striking there. From there, used the insane kicking skills. I mean, he's so good at kicking to keep Douglas at a distance. And Saeed closed out the round with some more kicks and a late takedown. It was all pretty dead even, really. And I didn't even really know who I would have given it to. Maybe Saeed, only because I guess he did the later action. But honestly, again, it was so close. I really could have seen that one going either way. Silva tried to pressure Saeed in the second round, but he kept getting countered by huge shots. Saeed shot in for a takedown at one point, but Silva was determined to keep this fight on the feet. And when you've got that kind of size, it helps a lot. Then out of nowhere, Douglas actually landed, or I should say, well, I mean, it's such a long name, Douglas Silva de Andrade, really. Douglas landed a bomb of a spinning back fist that dropped Saeed on his back. Thanks to that, I mean, I had it either tied or Douglas was up 2-0. That's the only way to score that. So it was very, very close on that one. Instead of working on the striking, Silva opened up the final round by picking Saeed up, slamming him into the canvas. How ballsy is that? With grappling skills, I mean, with those grappling skills, though, just insane grappling skills from Saeed. Very quick to get back up. I mean, not surprising at all. Then we had a quick stop for a groin strike there. And after that, Saeed ran in, grabbed himself his first takedown, I should say, of the fight. They got back up. Saeed made it interesting. very strange actually, of lying on his back and throwing up kicks as Douglas was just standing there. I mean, if you're up already, maybe that makes sense. You can do that. You can get away with that. But when it's that close on the cards, probably not a great idea to do that. Thanks to some extra activity and the quick takedown, might have been enough for Saeed. That's kind of what I had, but it was so close. And personally, I'm not even kidding. I really actually did have it for Silva. I really did. I thought it was 29-28 for Silva. It was so close though. You know, I really could have seen it. I was going 29-28 on either side. I really could have seen it going either way. Personally, I would have scored it for Silva, but again, it was so close on this one. And the judges went the other way with it, actually. 29-28, 29-28, and a baffling 30-27 for Saeed there. And I mean, again, that's just insane. Like, I mean, like he literally got dropped by a spinning back fist, like full on dropped, knocked down by a spinning back fist, and you give him the round. Like, are you out of your fucking mind? Like, it's just so insane. It's just so silly to see stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. That being said, though, like I said, I really could have gone either way on the decision. Wasn't mad about that. Of course, again, it was Saeed was my pick anyway, so I couldn't have been too mad anyway. But it's like, and to see it 30-27 too, it's kind of like, okay, you're insane. Anyway, moving on. Co-main event: Caio Borralho, Armen Petrosyan. I had Borralho by finish on this one. Really didn't think Petrosyan was going to have anything here. I knew how good Borralho was. Should have been a much bigger favorite in my opinion. So I hope people put a decent amount of money on Borralho, because I even said how good this guy was and how dominant he was going to be. And that is exactly what happened here. Borralho exploded early, landed a head kick, some combos, and then a huge takedown to open the fight. So already just winning this fight dominantly. From there, took Petrosyan's back, started to work for a submission. He was defending it pretty well, but Caio just absolutely dominating him with nearly 4 minutes of control time. So obviously, first round way in favor of Caio. You could even maybe argue a 10-8, but I don't know. I mean, I don't give out 10-8s that much, so I wouldn't have done that, but you could. After a close round, or after a minute of close striking in the second round, Borralho dragged Petrosyan to the ground again. Petrosyan did manage to return to his feet, get back to the striking, but Caio dragged him back down. Easily won the round on the cards, easily up 2-0. I mean, it wasn't even close. Third round, much slower to start. Only some clinch work from Borralho on this one. Seemed as though Borralho was starting to actually slow down quite a bit. Yikes, that's not good. In next fights, that's not going to be good. Definitely need to fix that, tighten that up. Leading to Petrosyan shutting down most of Caio's offense. But despite of that, Borralho still grabbed enough control time, I would say, to even just win that round, clearly 30-27. And yeah, that's what happened. Clear unanimous decision win for Caio Borralho. Just incredible. I mean, he is so good. So good. And this really just reinforced that even more. Because, I mean, really, Petrosyan actually, I would say, because he was in the split decision with Gregory Rodriguez, who is also very, very good. And I thought that Gregory Rodriguez won that fight. So, I mean, and that was a split decision. So, I mean, you got to think, well, Rodriguez is one of the best people in the division. So the fact that he struggled with Petrosyan and Borralho just blazed through him like it wasn't even close, that tells you how good Caio Borralho really is right there. Next up, it was the main event. Fiziev That's who I had going into this. I thought he was actually going to get a finish here. Yeah, because he's just so good. He's just so unbelievably good at striking. And RDA does have a kind of a habit of getting hit by strikers quite a bit. Doesn't get finished by them, but 5 rounds plus Fiziev being basically probably the best striker in the whole division. And I'm dead serious about that. He might actually be the best striker in the lightweight division, which is a lot to say. There's a lot of strikers in the lightweight division that are incredible, but Fiziev, unbelievable, unbelievable. So Fiziev opened up with that striking early, the huge kicks. I mean, best kicks I've ever seen. Like, you can't get better kicks than that. He is just so good at kicks. Barboza actually, Barboza may be a better kicker. I don't know. It's pretty close though between those two. Anyway, after a minute of that, RDA jumped forward with his grappling. We knew that was going to happen, and this is where we weren't really sure entirely what was going to happen. I mean, I saw Fiziev shutting down a lot of grappling in other fights, so I figured he was going to do that here a little bit more too. But because I knew how good RDA was, especially considering he was a welterweight, I figured Fiziev was going to have at least a couple of problems. Sadly for him, though, for RDA, though, couldn't really quite get anything going, and Fiziev went back to landing some pretty good combos. And finally, Fiziev actually landed a pretty big one, gave RDA the spaghetti legs there, which really led to a pretty clear opening round for Fiziev there. RDA never really did anything all that significant there. Excuse me. After some crisp combos from Fiziev to open the second round, RDA shot in for another takedown. Excuse me, surprise, surprise. Got a lot closer this time, but was still shut down. Then went for a second attempt. Looked like he was going to grab it, but then Fiziev actually reversed him and ended up on top. Then they got up, and it was actually Fiziev that was going for the clinch along the fence and winning the clinch along the fence. As the round went on, really started to land more strikes and stunned RDA a couple of times. You know, basically another pretty clear round. Pretty clear round for Fiziev there, up 2-0. Once again, RDA opened the round, the third round, I should say, with some grappling, really fighting hard for the takedown. Sat him down for half a second, but clearly couldn't really do anything with it. And but Fiziev never really landed all that much this time. So for me, because of that takedown and really because of just RDA being more active, seemed pretty clear that it was 2-1, 2-1 for Fiziev there. Fiziev landed some pretty good combos to open the fourth. RDA, of course, went towards the grappling. You know, same old, same thing. Then after some big strikes from RDA, actually, it was Fiziev that started to push the clinch along the fence, trying to avoid the strikes, maybe getting a little more tired. But I mean, I wouldn't really even say that Fiziev was tired. It's just that RDA doesn't get tired. Really, that's all it is. That was when it looked as though Fiziev was starting to slow down. And for the first time in the fight, RDA started to get a huge takedown. And that is exactly where it's like, okay, yeah, see, that's where the 5-round cardio that I was talking about was going to come in, which is why I thought if it did go the full distance, that RDA was going to have a pretty good shot of winning the fight, only because of his cardio and the grappling, because it's hard to shut down grappling when you're 4 or 5 rounds deep and you're exhausted and you're a striker. Not saying that Fiziev can't grapple at all, but you've been focusing all your energy on striking, and now you've got to grapple against basically the best grappler, one of the best grapplers in the UFC. So, not a good combination. Anyway, so to me, pretty clear 2-2 at that point, because that was the fourth round. Really, really worked in that wrestling in the fourth round there. So either one of them really could have grabbed this fight at that point. Just as the round was starting, though, Fiziev landed a huge, huge bomb, dropped RDA. Ref stopped it right there. No follow-up shots, and that was it. A late TKO win, which is exactly what I said was going to happen. I was shooting for the 4th round, but 5th round, there we go. But I'm not going to lie, I was getting a little worried because I was like, oh, he's not looking good. I don't know, man. I really thought, especially the way that it was going, because the 3rd round was close, but RDA was getting the wrestling. 4th round dominated by RDA's wrestling. So I was like, oh, 5th round's going to be all RDA and he's going to win the decision, basically kind of like I thought he was going to if Fiziev didn't get the finish. So worked out exactly like we thought we were going to. It was a good week for us, actually, really. For the predictions, it was fantastic because most of the things that happened were exactly kind of what we thought we were going to happen, except for Vandera. That was annoying. But again, that was only ruined with 3 minutes left in the fight. Other than that, it was perfect. Anyway, what's next, though? What is next for these two, Fiziev and RDA? I mean, we have to see what's going to be happening with the top 5 first. So we don't really know what's next for Fiziev because you got to see what happens with everybody else first. Poirier seems to want Chandler. We've seen some beef in person from Poirier. Chandler is just like, I don't know, man. I don't know what you're doing, bro. Gaethje might get Gamrot. That's kind of what they've been talking about because Gamrot wants Gaethje. I could see that happening. Most likely, though, I would say Fiziev is probably... Oh, yeah, right. The winner of Dariush and Islam gets the title shot. So there's that. We know that already. That really just leaves the loser. Well, we're pretty sure we know that. That really just leaves the loser of that Islam and Dariush matchup. And to me, that would actually be very similar to fighting RDA, but just slightly harder. So to me, that is the perfect next step for Fiziev. It makes so much sense. It also is a huge challenge for either Dariush or Islam because they've never gone against a striker like Fiziev. Because Fiziev is just, like I said, basically the best striker in the division. I mean, he's just absolutely incredible. So from both sides, it makes a lot of sense. And that is what I would like to see next. That would make sense for both, whoever it is going next. I would think that would make a lot of sense. And he actually did mention Gaethje as well during the press conference, which we could also see. I mean, who would not want to see that? Fiziev, an insane striker, and Gaethje, who doesn't care. He's just going to walk through it and get the shit kicked out of him, basically, by Fiziev, and then land his own things and maybe win a 5-round decision because he's just insanely tough. So yeah, I mean, who would not? That's obviously a clear main event or like a co-main on a huge pay-per-view. I mean, that's an insane fight. And I really do hope that happens. But, from a title shot perspective, it actually will, like I said, make more sense the other way. But again, in terms of a show, yeah, Gaethje and Fiziev, that is incredible. As for RDA, I mean, no title run anymore. That's gone, which is too bad. I don't know why I'm sitting like that. What am I doing? What am I doing here? That shuts down the title run, obviously, which is sad to say because he's a great guy. He's been around for so long. He's so good, but there's no more title run there. Like that's it because you've got so many other people in the way in front of you now. You've got Gamrot, Dariush, Islam, Fiziev, and then Connor gets back in there and does something. Poirier's still at the top. Gaethje's still there doing stuff. It's like there's so, and Chandler, how could I even forget about Chandler? There's so many people above RDA now after this. That's it. So that's too bad. But he'll still have some great fights. And speaking of Connor, I still think that is the perfect matchup for Connor to come back to. It makes perfect sense. I mean, it's a fight that was supposed to happen a couple of times. RDA also fights at 172, so maybe they even go in at 170. RDA and Connor at 170 to get back in there. Fucking sign me up for that. I mean, I'm buying that all day. That's incredible. That's an incredible fight. And it's a difficult fight. It really is. I mean, you say, okay, well, Connor's huge. He's got all the striking, he's got all the whatever, the hype behind him. And RDA just came off a loss. Plus, he's been fighting at 155, blah, blah, blah. But no, like, remember how good RDA really is. And then also, Connor hasn't fought in a long time, hasn't won in much longer. So to me, that makes the most sense. And he's also got the name. RDA has the name. So, I think that is really the perfect fight to go to. And then, hopefully, I mean, being a fan of Connor, I do like both of them, but being a fan of Connor and in terms of the UFC's trajectory in general, you would kind of hope that Connor would win that. And then, of course, using that momentum either goes on, like going back to 155 and doing better there, or going to 170, just moving up to 170 permanently, like I think he should, and wiping through that division. Because honestly, I don't think that division is nearly as good as 155. And he would have a much better chance there. But anyway, that's that. The bonuses, KO of the night. I mean, you can't give it to anybody other than Fiziev. You knocked out RDA in the 5th round. I mean, that's incredible. Sub of the night, only one. There was the only one in the night. That was David Onama. Brawl of the night, clearly Michael Johnson and Jamie Mullarkey. Insane fight. And most valuable fighter bonus went to Rafael Fiziev for, knocking out RDA in the 5th round and winning, just beating RDA in general. I mean, and also the fact that people were doubting him so much, saying, oh, he won't be able to do the grappling. Oh, he won't be able to do 5 rounds. He shut down literally every single part of that. I don't know how many takedowns he shut down, but it was quite a few. I think it was at least 12 takedowns that he completely shut down, which is incredible considering it's RDA, and those were his heaviest takedowns at the start of the fight he shut down. So, very impressive, and he is very much on his way to being close to getting a title shot for sure. So, had to give him the MVF of the night to Rafael Fiziev, the best Rafael in the UFC. That is now official. Before we actually, there's a couple of things we need to do before the break. This is going to be a very, very long episode. And again, I said I was going to try and go through it fast, and I just keep going on tangents here. And I mean, like, they're good tangents. They're always good. I mean, come on, we're good. But I did want to keep this going. So BFL 73, Battlefield Fight League 73. No title. Actually, no, there was a title on the line. It was an interim title in the main event. We'll talk about that, of course. We'll talk about all of them. But yeah, in Canada, Vancouver, rep in Canada. I mean, that's what we're looking for. I don't even know why I said. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. The first fight of the night, insane. But like, one of the most insane fights I've ever seen. I'm not even kidding. Seriously, do yourself a favor. Go on Fight Pass. Go to BFL 73. Watch this fight. It was Brandon Lebrecht, Samson Bieri, or Beery, I believe it was pronounced. Seriously, go watch this fight. It was insane to me that this is both of their first pro fights. It just went crazy, and I will give you every single detail about it, of course. It ended up being fight of the night, as you can tell by how excited I am. And also check on my Instagram. Actually, I even included a screenshot, and I never do this. I included a screenshot of during the fight to show how insane this was getting. I mean, there was so much blood everywhere. It was just unreal. So Beery came in heavy with the striking. Lebrecht shut that down, clinched up with Beery along the fence. They separated from there, leading to back and forth striking from both guys. Both of them landed some crisp combos and heavy shots. It was close, but with the forward pressure, Beery was the one that started to land the heavier shots. But that's when the fight took a brutal turn. Lebrec landed a knee that split open BLÜ bad, like bad. The doctor came in the middle of the opening round. That should tell you how bad it was. But the cut was on the bridge of his nose, so they continued to fight. Makes sense. It wasn't, don't stop that. I mean, it's on his nose, for fuck's sake. BLÜ didn't let that cut slow him down, though. Yeah, came into the second round, kept that forward pressure and landed some bombs. Lebrec wasn't letting the pressure stop him as he started to land bombs of his own as well. I didn't even know how to score any of this. I wasn't even really, I don't even think I did keep track of the score, which I never really do. Like, I don't really do that. A fight has to be pretty insane for me to not even think about scoring it because it's so crazy. And that's exactly what was happening here. Halfway through the second round, already looked as though this was going to be fight of the night. I mean, like I said, they were actually slipping all over the place. There was so much blood. I mean, just truly just chaotic. Yeah, absolutely insane. From there, BLÜ, now I'm thinking of like Fieri. No, anyway, BLÜ was the one who started to land the heavier shots. But that, we already talked about that. Yeah, from there, BLÜ got the biggest moment of the fight. This was in the second round. Dropped Lebrec with, I lost myself there. Lebrec landed a huge landed a huge shot on Lebrec, I should say, and that's when they got to the canvas for the first time. Mostly because, like I said, they were slipping around so much. Seriously, like that's not even a joke. Like he got knocked down and slipped basically because, and they couldn't. Neither one of them could really stand up because there was so much blood and they were slipping all over the place. Just absolutely insane. At the end of the round, BLÜ landed a flurry of beautiful strikes, maybe taking the round on the cards. Again, it was so close. Both of them landed so much, pretty hard to tell who had taken the round. Both of them looked exhausted in the final round there, but we're still landing some pretty heavy shots. Lebrec then decided to switch it up, pinned BLÜ along the fence, grabbed a fair bit of control time there. So kind of made sense that Lebrec did grab that last round, but I could have gone, could have been 29-28 in either direction, really. And the judges gave it to Lebrec. I remember kind of thinking that I agreed only because of the last round. So I think I did have it tied 1-1 going into the final round there. But like I said, it was so close. So close. And again, seriously, do yourself a favor and watch that fight. It was insane. The second one, Makinde Adeyemi and Rafael Ouellet, who is actually brothers, of course, of the other Ouellet, who I can't remember the name of off the top of my head. But I remember thinking when I even heard the name, I was like, oh, I remember somebody with that name before, which I'm pretty sure I've even talked about on the stream, actually, the brother. Anyway, the first noticeable thing was the size advantage that Adeyemi brought into this. He used that immediately. Excuse me. Choked there. Dropped Ouellet with a bomb less than 30 seconds in. Knowing he had a clear advantage of the ground, Ouellet pulled guard multiple times, and you don't like to see that. It's not a good strategy. Never a good strategy in MMA. Because for one, the judges just aren't normally going to score it for you that way. Being on the bottom, not good. But then like openly doing it, unless you know that you're definitely going to be submitting this guy, don't do that. In the first round, which is exactly what he was doing, totally get it. You want to feel them out. You never know if you're going to get a submission or not unless you just go for it. So the first round, totally understood that. And actually, he was so active really from the bottom, got some pretty good submission attempts there that I actually did give Ouellet the opening round there, which I'm not sure I've ever done for somebody that's on the bottom the entire time. I don't think I've ever given the round to anybody like that before. Anyway, Adeyemi did try to get him off though, slammed him into the ground, huge slam. They actually put this on Twitter after I think even Fight Pass actually retweeted it, and the slam. I mean, it was insane, and the fact that he just kept fighting through it is unbelievable. But yeah, still kept dominating on the ground after that. Anyway, yeah. So I actually had, like I said, I gave Ouellet the opening round there. I got lost again, distracted. But yeah, Adeyemi started to kind of like Ouellet just wasn't doing as much on the ground after the first round though. McKinday, and that really was in the second round too. Basically, all the same thing in the second round, but Adeyemi was landing also more on the feet. So because of the action on the feet, and then Ouellet wasn't as active anymore, I was saying it was 1-1. The final round, McKinday landed a very rare, clean, like clean, cleanly landed it. Question mark kick straight to the face of Ouellet, and he looked rocked. Amazingly, though, maybe Adeyemi just didn't see how bad he had him hurt. Didn't really take advantage of it. Didn't really walk in and get it. I honestly think he probably could have gone for a TKO win there. You know, you knock him down after that, or stumbling back into the fence or something, and then that's it, you get the TKO win, but didn't go for it. Maybe, like I said, didn't see. And Ouellet just openly did the same thing again for the third round in the row, ended up on the bottom on purpose, trying to get a submission there. And it's a weird score, weird fight to score, because like I said, when somebody's good on the ground, but they're actively giving up the dominant position, they don't get a finish. So how do you score that? It's really weird. But I thought it was pretty clear, 29-28 for Adeyemi. The judges ended up agreeing 29-28 for Adeyemi, but it's a weird fight to watch in general. It's bizarre. The third one, Ash Mashregi and James Foster. I mean, just looking at those two guys and hearing about them, I knew this was going to be completely insane. Neither one of them wanted to take it slow at first. Both of them landed with some huge shots. Foster landed the big one first, with his hands down, taunting Ash. I mean, it was insane to watch. I love this fight. It never a dull moment. Just every second of this fight, for as long as it lasted, was crazy. I mean, I loved it. I love that kind of thing. Mashregi fought back, though, throwing out some bombs of his own. But Foster walked straight at him and landed so many shots along the fence that it really looked as though Ash was going to get finished. I mean, it was getting pretty iffy there. Then, amazingly, the action flipped right away. Foster dropped by a huge counter there. And after that, Mashregi pushed for some grappling, ended up on Foster's back, quickly got under Foster's chin, and got a submission in seriously one of the fastest paced fights I've ever seen. I really do love watching these regional. I mean, I guess you could call it regional MMA. It kind of is, kind of isn't, because it is on Fight Pass. But yeah, I love watching these smaller promotions because you see some insane stuff constantly. And like I said, I never would, you never would have seen that opening fight with all that blood, just the insane carnage of it all. You never see that kind of thing. Plus, this one so fast paced. I mean, you see some seriously insane shit constantly. And then what we'll see in the main event, and actually even maybe the co-main too, you start to see people that are like, oh, okay, we could easily see this kind of guy being in the UFC later for sure. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, definitely thought that a couple of times on this card. Fourth fight, Adam DeFreitas, Christian Tremaine. Not too much about this fight. DeFreitas opened it up with a couple of crisp combos. Sadly, Tremaine responded with a bad groin kick, pausing the action for a couple minutes, actually. And less than a minute later, there was another one straight to the groin of DeFreitas. I mean, they were so hard. Like, they were brutally hard. Like, seriously, two of the hardest ones I've ever seen. And again, not something you normally see. especially this hard. Not something you normally see. And that soon, really, it was like literally, like I said, less than a minute later. I mean, to get kicked that hard, square, and like the worst angle you could possibly get, like just square, and it was with the shin, just like literally, you could not have landed it better if you were trying. That is how square it landed twice, very hard, right in a row. So horrible. Really took his time on that one. And it actually, I mean, I thought pretty clear choice to take a point here. Like I was like, yeah, he's losing a point because that's brutal, especially that close in. You know, you got to think pretty right away you're going to struggle to fight. So I think a pretty obvious place to take a point. Amazingly, the ref did not do that. I don't know. I don't even know what to say other than that was kind of insane that he didn't take a point. But didn't matter. Did not matter at all. Tremaine went in for a takedown, found himself on top, but it was actually De Freitas who locked in a deep guillotine. And a few seconds later, Tremaine tapped a couple minutes into the fight. And good for him because he was the one that got kicked all those times. So at least he got a win out of it and a great win, you know, a submission win in the first round. At least he got a good win out of it. Because, yeah, that would be brutal. After that, it was Maxim Susi and Josh Kwiatkowski. Susi seemed to be leading the action early, but Kwiatkowski was still doing well, trying to counter the striking. After some back and forth striking, it seemed to be Susi. Susi actually switched it up, dragged Josh down to the ground. Clearly won the opening round thanks to that. So Kwiatkowski came out hard in the second, lit Susi up with some wild shots along the fence. As the round went on, though, kind of started to slow down, and Susi started to regain that momentum. And after getting kicked in the groin for a second time, yes, there's more groin kicks in this one too. Kwiatkowski was the one who started to take the momentum back with his striking. So it seemed kind of like maybe 1-1, close though. Yeah, I think I didn't actually write down a score, but just based on what I'm reading, I think I thought it was 1-1. Kept that going into the final round, but Susi was really turning up the heat with some pretty heavy strikes there. Josh was getting hammered by some massive shots. Managed to save it by dragging Susi down to the ground. Couple of rough minutes on the from the bottom there for Susi, but he actually managed to reverse positions and get on top, and looked as though Kwiatkowski was going to grab the round on the cards after the takedown. But since, like I said, since Susi finished on top and had all the damage out of the start of the round, seemed pretty clear to me that Susi had won the decision. I think probably 29-28. I'm not really sure looking back on it, but I did think that Susi won. And the judges agreed, scoring it 30-27, 30-27, and 29-28 for Susi. Then we had a very, very good fight. This was a very interesting grappling heavy fight, which you don't normally see. And I would love to see that in the UFC. I don't know why we don't see it more. I guess because they're all so good at striking too that they just don't want to do it. But I would love to see a grappling matchup like this in the UFC. Very interesting to watch. Excuse me. Immediately clear that these were two of the most skilled fighters on the card. Like, you could tell right away that they were both really good. Both very cautious, crisp, and technical. Interestingly, it was actually Wasik who threw the first takedown. Interesting because, I really should have said it was Ali Wasik and Ogujan Yalcin. Yalcin is what was he again? Turkish wrestling champion. And he's very good. And I've seen him in another fight too, so I knew how good he was. So it was kind of insane to me that Wasik was the one taking this fight to the ground here. But that is what he tried to do here. Did not get the takedown, but he was doing very well in the clinch, controlling Yalcin and landing a bunch of knees. using his slick moves. It was Yalcin who actually dragged Wasik to the ground. Again, maybe not that surprising, like I said, Turkish national champion there, but couldn't keep him there for long. After some clinching along the fence, Yalcin, with a wild display of skill and strength, threw Wasik down to the canvas and finished the round in the dominant spot there. Right at the start of the round, the next round, I should say, they found themselves on the ground. Yalcin was on top, but Wasik had a pretty deep, almost knocked over my laptop here, pretty deep guillotine from the bottom, and from there, returned to their feet. But Wasik took the fight to the ground and found himself on top for the first time in the fight. Yeltsin managed to get up, and after a couple of minutes, but had clearly lost the round on the cards. Oh, there we go. I had it tied 1-1 because of that. Maybe starting to tire out, Yeltsin found himself in some trouble early, getting out grappled along the fence and actually taken down to the canvas there. Wasik took his back and started to really threaten the submissions and the punches. Couldn't really quite lock in a finish there, but he had like 4 minutes of control time from Yeltsin's back. So pretty clear win on the cards there, 29-28. And that probably would have been fight of the night had it not been for that insane, absolutely insane fight to start off the night. So that was another great fight. After that, we closed out the night main event, interim lightweight title fight. Navid Zangane, who we will talk a little bit about after this, and Austin Batra, who took this matchup fairly late. I think it was only a couple weeks ago. And it ended fairly quick. They stayed on their feet for a while, which favored Batra. I mean, in theory, at least. But eventually, just as expected, the wrestling champion Zangane shot in, threw Batra to the ground. Batra tried to defend for a little bit, did a fairly decent job for a while, but just a matter of time before Zangane made him tap to a just insane rear naked choke. And he is so good to win the interim title. And we are going to fight about him. We're going to talk about Navid Zangane for a little bit, only because clearly something special here, something very, very special that you do not normally see. This was his very first MMA fight, people, for an interim title here. Excuse me. Wow, I'm gonna need some water after this one. You're gonna need some water during the break. So yeah, Navid also had 7 people. He had 7 people back out of this fight. Then finally, Batra took it, and it was for, like I said, the interim title in his first MMA fight. And not only did he just dominate he dominated in his MMA debut, got the belt, very impressive first round submission. I mean, you gotta think this guy is clearly going to be somewhere, if not on the Contender Series, straight into the UFC somewhere. Like this kid's going somewhere for sure. I mean, it's obviously going to be a couple more fights. You want to see a little bit more, especially on the Contender Series. You see they've got at least 3 or 4 fights in them. I mean, even Pereira, Alex Pereira, who of course beat Sean Strickland, even he had, I think it was 3 fights before the UFC. So that's what you're going to be seeing here too. You're going to see him get, a second and a third fight, hopefully in the BFL, so we can watch it and keep talking about it and say, hey, from Canada, fighting in Canada this whole time. That's cool. And then we'll also have an advantage when it comes to the Contender Series, the betting on the Contender Series. Maybe we'll have an advantage on that one. Anyway, so yeah, big things from this guy though. So yeah, sub of the night, Navid Zangane, obviously getting, his first MMA fight, destroyed it for an interim title. Of course he was going to get sub of the night. Brawl of the night, absolutely no question. It was that first one. Brandon Lebrecht, Samson Beery. Most valuable fighter, I actually give out 2. I mean, obviously another one to Navid Zangane. Obviously, clear. There were no KOs, by the way, so no KO of the night. And so I decided to give out a fourth one anyway, and that was Ash Meshregi, because he was actually on a 4-fight losing streak before this, hadn't fought in 4 years. Plus he had multiple surgeries. So he came all of that, plus getting destroyed basically for a few seconds there, to grab an incredible first round finish. So you got to recognize that kind of tenacity in Ash Meshregi. So that is it for BFL 73. That's it for UFC Vegas 58. Now, well, before we take our short break, we're barely clinging on here. The Ultimate Fighter, Season 30, Episode 11. There actually really isn't a whole lot to say about this one. I mean, the last heavyweight fight, I should say, of the season, only one more episode after this, folks. That is next Tuesday. Then no more Ultimate Fighter for quite a while. I'm assuming probably for another 6 months or so until it starts again, maybe. We'll see. And then we'll be talking about the Contender Series from now on after that. But anyway, that's later. For now, Episode 11. Last time, of course, we saw Brogan Walker, Laura Gallardo. Brogan Walker ran away with that one in a decision. And in this one, we had the 2 number 1 picks of the season. That was Eduardo Perez from Team Nunes, and Mohamed Usman from Team Pena. If you missed the earlier episode, Team Pena's number 1 pick, Mohamed Usman, got his spot after he barely kind of beat Mitchell Sipe, the trash-talking piece of garbage Mitchell Sipe that I don't like at all, and I don't think most people do. I don't like him at all. I mean, he's just terrible. In a tight decision. After that, Eduardo Perez, which was the heavyweight episode after that, from Team Nunes, grabbed his spot after he completely destroyed Bobby Maximus. I mean, he just struggled with the wrestling a little bit, but after that, finished him with a first round TKO. They had their family chats, of course. They all got to talk on the phone. That was great to see. Learned, of course, a little bit about both guys. But being super blessed to have the welterweight champion as a brother, Kamaru Usman, of course. Usman actually got to stop by the house, got to talk to Muhammad a little bit, shared some wisdom and all that, some stories and all that too. Very interesting to see. So that was basically the whole preamble. And then it went straight into the fight. No coach's challenge, nothing crazy happening. Just pure family. So yeah, the fight. Usman was the one pushing the pace early, landed a couple of pretty clean, crisp combos, and from there shot in for a clinch along the fence. Quickly backed up though by a huge knee. Oh, I mean, that could have, if that landed, we would have seen a completely different fight here, I'm sure. Perez wasn't really landing too many of his own punches, but was doing pretty well with some heavy leg kicks. But you got to think, he's not really landing much else. And Usman is pressuring. And as it went on, it was pretty clear that Usman was winning the stand-up battle, picking Perez apart slowly and backing him up. So, I mean, I thought pretty clear first round for Usman there. This continued in the second round. I should really point away from the mic when I cough. I just kind of realized that. Anyway, what was I going to say? This continued into the second round with Usman striking, picking Perez apart from a distance, backing him up into the fence. A couple minutes into the round, and Usman landed the first takedown of the fight, I should say. Couldn't keep Perez down, but it did send a message from there. Finally, Perez had a moment of his own. I don't even know how to say it. Is it Perez or Perez? I don't remember. I'm just going to say Perez. I don't know. Anyway, finally, Perez had a moment of his own. Lit Usman up with some wild combos. Couldn't quite keep that momentum going, though. Every time, really, Eduardo threw something, Usman was back in and landing a couple of shots of his own. I mean, just the experience, I would say. I would say that's more so experience than anything, and it really followed followed the game plan there. So just a great game plan by Usman, and then also execution to get it done. But anyway, keep it going on. That round was much closer, I will say. The second round, with Eduardo's extra offense, but really it could have gone either way on the cards, honestly. So maybe, I would say probably 1-1 at that point. That's kind of how I was seeing it, but it was close. It could have gone to Usman. Knowing he needed to make a big move in the final round, obviously Perez really started to push that pace. Sadly for him, though, Usman was still using those counters. Um, and Usman still had, halfway through the round, both of them really did start to slow down, but Usman still had the extra output, the heavier output, and landed the heavier shots. So pretty clear to me after the 3 rounds were up that I would have said 29-28 Usman. So I just don't really see a way that you could have really scored it for anybody other than Usman. I mean, but the judges, the judges were split on that one. I guess it must have been 29-28 for both. They don't give the scores on the Ultimate Fighter. They only say the result. They don't say numbers at all. So we don't know if it was 29-28 or not, but I would imagine that's what they went with it. And it was a split decision, like I said, for Usman. I don't really know what they were looking at, to be honest. Like, I thought it was pretty clear for Usman for me. I don't know. But anyway, I've said this about a lot of the fighters, but Perez is a very, very talented fighter. I really do believe that. And I really do think we'll see him again in the UFC. And with Usman winning that fight, we've officially got our first final matchup of the season, which I believe will probably take place the first card of August. I would think that makes sense to me. I'll explain that after this. Between Muhammad Usman and Zach Pauga, which also means that it is an all Juliana Pena, Team Pena, I should say, heavyweight final for that one. Of course, that's not the case in the other one. We've already got Brogan Walker. Maybe we'll even see an all-team Nunes flyweight final. Wouldn't that be insane? 2 all-team ones in each one's one matchup for each team. There you go. That would be pretty interesting. But anyway, next week we've got the last episode. Juliana Miller from Team Pena and Caitlin Neal from Team Nunes. I'm actually pretty excited for that. I think it's going to be really good. Not really a huge fan of Juliana Miller, but she does make it very interesting, and she's very good. And Caitlin Neal also very, very good. So it's going to be an interesting one. I really do think it is. But yeah, in terms of when that's going to be aired, I would imagine that we'd be seeing it the first week of August, and I'll tell you why. It's not happening this weekend. We know that already. But we're also not going to be seeing it next weekend, I would say, because the last episode is next Tuesday, which means you'd have to reveal ahead of time who won because of the press conferences and all that, which they're not going to do. So it's obviously not going to be in the next week. Excuse me. And it's obviously not going to be on the pay-per-view. That's clear. They would never do that on a pay-per-view. And that would be the last week, that would be the last week of July. And of course, actually, the coaches are the ones that are going to be headlining that one. So it would only make sense that it would be the week after that, the first card in August, that would be when we'll see Zach Pauga, Muhammad Usman, Brogan Walker, and whoever wins this final matchup. That makes the most sense to me. But anyway, wow. Yeah, I knew this was going to be the longest one I've ever done. An hour and a half in, and we are going to be taking our first short break. Well, the only short break. I really could have taken multiple breaks here. I probably should have, honestly. But we're going to be taking a break now, and then we will be talking about UFC Long Island. It's a very good looking card. There's some real good mashups on this card. Seriously, I'm so excited for this one. I will be back right after this. I'll take a sip of water and you can watch this short. I believe it's a 40-second. See you after this.
Allow me to introduce High Stick Vodka, a new way to celebrate victory. Gather around the glass with an award-winning, ultra-premium Canadian-made vodka. You probably won't listen when I say High Stick Vodka has a smooth, hard-hitting taste, or that it's developed in the birthplace of hockey. You won't listen when I say High Stick Vodka is a tribute to the game of hockey, or when I tell you it's distilled 4 times using Canada's purest mountain spring water to provide an authentic, remarkable flavor. But maybe you will listen when I say it comes in a f***ing hockey stick. Showcase your passion for hockey with our limited edition hand-blown hockey stick bottle. Whether you're celebrating victory or drinking to defeat, High Stick Vodka is better after every shot. Visit us at highstickvodka.com. It also comes in this regular bottle. Celebrate victory. Drink responsibly.
And we're back with UFC Long Island. Again, insane card. I can't wait. It's going to be exciting. Even talking about this is going to be great. So we'll open up with the main card. And that, as of now, opens up with Lauren Murphy and Miesha Tate. Of course, that was scheduled twice now, actually. I thought it was only scheduled once, but then was reminded now that it was actually scheduled in May 1st. And then scheduled for UFC 276 a couple weeks ago. Sadly, was canceled twice. I think one of them was COVID. I can't remember. I don't even know what happened the other time. But yeah, I think this one was COVID. Finally get to see them square off, these two veterans. A 5-fight win streak, including Andrea Lee, Roxanne Modafferi, Joanne Wood, Murphy. Took Murphy to the title shot against Valentina Shevchenko. That was her last fight. Didn't really go her way, obviously, clearly. She got dominated by the champ, finished in the 4th round. Miesha Tate, no stranger to those championship bouts as well. But that was before the extended leave from the UFC, and that was from 2016 to early 2021. So gone for 5 years, basically. I wouldn't say hasn't looked, I mean, she hasn't looked as good, let's say that, but she still looked very good. Grabbed an impressive finish against Marion Renault in her first fight back, and lost a tough battle to Ketlin Vieira. And honestly, I'm not the only one that was thinking this. I was one of the people, I think, that thought Tate was winning that fight because it was really that close. And Tate was doing pretty well in that fight. And Ketlin Vieira is huge. And really the only reason she lost, I would say, is because she was that big. She is huge for 135. So if you know what I mean, she's fighting Murphy now down at 125. So Tate has now left her home at 135 down to 125, where she will have definitely the size advantage. I mean, Murphy is big, but definitely could not compete at 135, whereas Tate was competing very well at 135. So I think that it's kind of, there's a pretty clear choice here. Let's just say that. I mean, it's not completely washed one-sided or anything like that. But, Tate, she has, what did we say here? She's heavier in the grappling. She's controlled both opponents. So, I mean, you got to think if she's controlling Ketlin Vieira, who is huge for 135, she is going to easily control Murphy at 125. Easily, especially since Shevchenko. I mean, Shevchenko is incredible, but you got to remember, she was actually smaller than Murphy, too. So you got to think that Tate is going to dominate this in the grappling and the wrestling in that kind of way. So that's how I see this one going. I don't really see a finish here, but you got to think that it's going to be a fairly clear decision for Tate here. And that's where I'm going with it. And we need my banner There's the banner. Let's go. Over to bet 99 for those odds. The odds definitely favoring Tate as expected. Minus 189 for Tate, plus 154 for Murphy. And I got to be honest, I think that's actually, that's pretty generous in terms of Murphy, actually, because I really thought this would even be a little higher. But I see what they're saying. Like basically what they're saying is Tate has been kind of unpredictable and hasn't been as good as we necessarily thought she was going to be coming back, maybe. And then also new division plus Murphy just had the title shot. So I see what they're saying. But if you actually watched the fights and watched them play out, it's really not that close. I would say Tate's a very clear choice here. So minus 189, that's fantastic. And one of the rare opportunities where I will actually be putting Tate into a parlay. I don't normally put women into the parlays unless it's like super convincing, because their fights tend to be very unpredictable or just close in general. But this one is one that I am definitely confident enough about that I would be putting into the parlays that I suggest there. So minus 189 for Tate on that one. So yeah, going that way. And I mean, the over under very much heavily favoring the over. Minus 313 right now for the over 2.5. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. You could go with a parlay on that one. Or, I mean, if you really think Tate has a huge advantage here, you could maybe go for a finish. But remember that this is 3 rounds. There aren't really going to be that many, especially when they're also, I mean, I don't want to say they're old, but they are on the other side, on the second half of their career, obviously. So, not really that many finishes at that point. So you could maybe be crazy and go for the under at plus 233, but probably the parlay at minus 313 would be the safer bet. After that, I mean, this to me is one of the best matchups of the night for sure. If not, I would say maybe the second best one on the card. It's really, really good. You've got Shane Burgos and Charles Jourdain from Canada. We love the Canadian. I mean, obviously being Canadian, you gotta love the Canadians. But I gotta say, probably one of the worst matchups Jourdain could actually. Well, to be fair, that's actually stylistically not bad for Jourdain, but knowing how good Burgos is, this is terrible for Jourdain, and I don't think there's any way that Jourdain comes out of this with a win. I really don't think so. I'm sorry. It's just not happening. Explosive matchup though, but Burgos, my God, he's gone 7-3 with insane wins. He's got wins over Charles Hosa, Cub Swanson, Makwan Amir Khani. Great wins there. And not only have his wins been entertaining, but so have his losses. And by the way, those losses were very, very close. And they were all 3 of them to people that are currently ranked. Edson Barboza, which was an insane fight, Josh Emmett, and Calvin Kattar. So that tells you right there how good Shane Burgos is. By the way, he's huge. He's massive. On the other side, Jourdain never fought anybody like anything like that. Never fought anybody like Barboza, Emmett, or Kattar. But he has had his fair share of wars, and he's very exciting. So that's why I know this is going to be a good fight. But I also know that this is going to be a little bit one-sided, and we're going to see Jourdain get just shredded on the feet. I'm sorry to say. UFC started a little bit rough for Charles Jourdain. 1-2-1, which is a bizarre record. A split decision loss to Andre Fili and a split decision draw, bizarre, to Kulabau. Since then, though, he's gone 3-1 with dominant wins over Lando Venata, Marcelo Rojo, and Andre Ewell. But again, there's levels. There's levels here. I mean, they always say it. They say it all the time, but there's levels. Burgos is doing well against, like Kattar, Emmett, and Barboza, I mean, not doing insanely well, but doing okay to the point where it was entertaining and it was a decision in most cases, I think, except for Barboza, I know. So yeah, there's levels. And then like Jourdain is struggling against people like, well, I mean, he definitely won that one, but like, it's still close and still lost to Feely, split decision draw to Kulabau, and Veneta and Rojo, like those aren't high profile wins. Let's just say that. So yeah, there's no doubt that this is going to be scrappy, but Burgos is clearly the heavy favorite here, and in a lot of people's minds, definitely in my mind. He's got great grappling. I mean, never mind the striking that he's going to shred Jourdain apart with. He's also got the grappling, and he is massive for this division. Jourdain is going to be dwarfed by him too. So he's got the size, he's got the strength, he's got the skill, he's got the grappling and the striking. I mean, yeah, I mean, he just walks through damage. So yes, I know Jourdain is going to land some things. He's probably going to bust open Burgos a little bit, but Burgos just walks through that. He does not care. He doesn't get affected by it, and he doesn't care. He's just going to walk through it and just pile drive straight through Jourdain. So yeah, I really don't know if he's going to get a finish. I don't think he will, because Jourdain is insanely tough, and they're both insanely tough. So I'm thinking, that's what we're going to see. We're going to be seeing a decision here for Burgos. And that's really the point. Actually, yeah, I wrote that out too. It's like Burgos has an insane kind of strategy. Like he walks through things to get to what he wants to do, which is either grappling or landing heavy shots. That's not a strategy that's going to work against people like, as we saw, Cater, or even somebody, or Barboza, whatever, like Emmett and those guys. But it also would never work against somebody like Ige or Volkanovski or Holloway. That's just not going to work. It just doesn't work like that. But it will work against somebody like Jourdain that's smaller, not quite as good as those other guys, and also gets hit a lot. That's the kind of strategy. So this strategy will work very well for this fight, not so much when he gets up to the higher ones. And that will come into play, I'm sure, later when we talk about him in other fights in the future. I will probably bring it up then. I hope I do, because yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that's where I'm going with this. And I think it's a pretty clear choice. So yeah, the odds actually favor us pretty well in this one. Burgos is a minus 172. So they're actually saying this is very close. I don't see it as close at all. So I'm actually even going to be putting this as one of the parlays. Maybe not even the main parlay, but definitely, actually maybe even one of the main parlays. Yeah, at minus 172, because I just don't think it's really going to be. I mean, I think it's going to be entertaining, and you could say that's competitive, but do I think Jourdain really has much of a chance of winning? Sadly, no. The over-under on this one, they're a little bit split. They're over-under 2.5. The over is at minus 123 right now. The under, minus 106. So they're not really sure. To me, though, like I said, they're both insanely tough. I think this is going to a decision. But, you could easily see Burgos grab a finish in there at some point. So I'm going with the over 2.5, but I totally see it happening either way. I mean, it really is a 50-50 shot at that point. Then after that, another great matchup, this time at flyweight. You got Matt Schnell and Sumu Darji. I mean, that's another great fight. And this one is actually one of the closest ones of the night, I would say. This really could go either way in my mind. Even though this is actually one of the most lopsided ones in terms of the odds, I really do think this really could go either way. Schnell was looking good, I should say, on a 4-fight winning streak. Since then, not so good in the next 4. 1-3 brutal losses to Pantoja, Bontarine, and Royval in his last one, and a split decision win, yikes, over Tyson Nam. Sumudarji, complete opposite situation, overcoming a loss in his debut, followed that up with 3 straight wins going into this one. Like I said, very, very close, but I'm giving Sumudarji the slight edge. He uses his length to avoid strikes and land heavy kicks. Plus, when he does get hit, he's very durable. Schnell, much better than people give him credit for, because he actually was beating Royval in that last one. And he's insanely good at it. He's so fast. He's got great striking and great grappling. The problem is, especially in this matchup, he gets a little bit too aggressive. He gets a little bit aggressive, and against somebody that's talented like Sumudarji, you're going to get dropped and finish. And that is exactly what I think is going to happen. Even if he doesn't, even if he stays more measured in his approach against Sumudarji, I'm still leaning towards Sumudarji in the decision. But I got to say, the odds do not do this justice whatsoever. It is much closer than the odds suggest on this one. What they're seeing, though, is that Schnell has lost quite a bit. 1-3, of course, split decision win, so barely a win, too. So really could have gone 0-4 in his last 4. But they're not looking at how good he was doing in some of those fights. But yeah, really the problem is that he's too aggressive. So if he can fix that, this will actually be a lot closer, like I said, than the odds suggested. The odds. Now we will actually get into those odds. Minus 260 for Sumudarji. So I will include this in one of the other parlays. Not necessarily the main one, because I don't think it really deserves minus 260. And that's a little bit worrying when it's like that. Plus 200 for Schnell. So yeah, you actually, I would even be okay, because, and I've said this before, when you've got people that are this close, it really could go either way. From a betting perspective, especially when the odds are that lopsided and it's that close, you might even want to throw a couple bucks on the underdog, plus 200 on Schnell. Just in case, basically, because it's certainly plausible. But yeah, I'm going with Sumudarji, and I will include this on one of the the longer parlay, let's say. The over-under. Over-under 2.5 is actually favoring the under right now at minus 150. I mean, I'm thinking there's probably going to be a finish too, but if I would say that if Schnell can be more patient, we're probably going to be ending up in a decision. But he hasn't been patient yet, so there's no reason to believe he's going to change it all, even though he should. I don't know. He might change eventually. Maybe this is the fight. So you could go with the over. If you're really trying to be risky, especially in this matchup, trying to get some huge profit in, you could definitely do Schnell and then also go even over 2.5. But I would still say that the safer bet here for sure is still Sumudarji and the under at minus 150. That's what I'm thinking. But that matchup to me is so mysterious. It really could go either way. And actually, the next one is a little bit like that too. It really could go either way, but I'm actually leaning in the opposite direction on this one. You've got Li Jingliang and Muslim Salikov. Very, very close matchup. 15 fights in the UFC, by the way, for Li. Insane. I had no idea until I looked at that and I was like, oh, wow, that's a lot of fights. Sadly, of course, because he's been only really fighting ranked opponents recently, his record has started to suffer. He's gone 1-2 in his last 3. The most significant, of course, was Chimaev. We all know how that went. Just absolutely destroyed. So I don't even want to talk about that one. There's no point, because nobody's like Chimaev. So there's no point even talking about it. Before that, grabbed a first-round finish over Ponzinibbio and actually a decision loss to Magny. So that one was close. Salikov did lose his UFC debut in 2017, but has gotten 5 wins since then, most recently beating Francisco Trinaldo. And that is why the odds actually do favor Salikov, We'll get into the numbers after this, but they do favor Salikov. And again, on paper, I totally see why. You've got Lee, who's gone 1-2, and you've got Salikov, who is 5-0 in his last 5. So I totally understand. I totally understand where they're coming from. But when you actually dive deeper into it, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, actually. They're both really good, and they have both similar styles. The only difference, though, is that Lee has the experience edge, of course. And by the way, when he fought Magny, he was at an 8-inch reach disadvantage. Lee was. So he had 8 inches less of reach, and he still managed to avoid most of the strikes coming back from him, and coming back at him, I should say, from Magny. And he out-grappled Magny a lot, quite a bit, and took him down. So if you can take down somebody that's as good as Magny, who's that tall, I mean, you can pretty much take down most people. On the other side, Salikov, fairly quick, fairly large, but all of his fights have been very, very close, and he's actually got a split decision on one of those. And against Zaleski, that was a split decision win. He was hit bad, like bad, multiple times, and barely edged the win in my mind. I don't even know if he really would have won that, honestly. It was so close. So yeah, there's a reason why that was a split decision, and that was Zaleski. Lee, obviously way better than that. So, like, I mean, Lee, with his movement, the striking, and then the grappling, I really do think that he's going to win a tight decision here. I really do. There's just so much more going in Lee's direction. Because, I mean, like, again, look at his loss. Like, his loss was to Magny, who is a staple of the rankings. And it was close. By the way, and again, like I said, avoided striking from 8 inches of reach disadvantage, plus out-grappled him and took him down. I mean, and then Chimaev was his other loss. I mean, and he knocked out Ponzinibbio in the first round. Like, there's so much going towards Lee in this one that I can't not pick him. So this is actually the underdog pick. This is my underdog of the week, let's say. Li Jingliang plus 136 against Salikov, who is minus 167. I just don't see much going in Salikov's direction. And we see this basically once, like at least once a card, I would say. And definitely once every 2 cards at least, where you see one matchup where the odds are kind of going in a direction. You're like, well, hang on a sec. That doesn't make much sense. This is one of them. This is the matchup where I'm like, that doesn't make much sense. We're going with Lee. So yeah, that's what we're going with on this one. Over under minus 150 for over 2.5, under 2.5 plus 116. I would say that's pretty fair. Like I said, I do see a decision happening. I think that's what I said. Yeah. And it makes sense. Lee, not necessarily known for a whole bunch of finishes, and Salikov also very tough. So I see a decision here that will favor Li Jingliang, especially as the fight goes on, because Lee does not slow down at all. And Salikov, maybe a little bit. So I definitely, as it goes on, Lee for sure has that advantage. So minus 150 for over 2.5. That's where I'm going. And the underdog plus 136 for Li Jingliang. That is where we're going. Co-main event. Michelle Watterson, the karate hottie. Gotta love her. And Amanda Lemos. Definitely not the closest matchup. And we don't actually normally see this, really. 2 women's fights that seem to have a pretty clear winner here. And this will definitely be on the parlay for Lemos, I gotta say. I love the karate hottie, of course. How can you not? She's so nice. She's so funny. Very experienced. Obviously attractive, yes. But yeah, just just a great person. Just a great person to be a fan of. But not going well recently. Has gone 1-3. Losses to Joanna, Esparza, and Rodriguez, which makes sense because those are the top, 3 of the top people. plus a split decision win over Angela Hill, which was very close. I mean, obviously, I did actually think that she probably won that, but it was very, very close. But as you may be able to notice, she was fighting at 115. This is at 125. Lemos also fighting at 115, moving up to 125. But the difference here is that Lemos, it actually makes sense that she was going up to 125 because she is actually very big, especially at 115. She's huge. Karate Hottie, not so much. And she was actually, Watterson was actually the 105 champion, the atom weight champion in, was it Invicta or LFA? I believe it was Invicta, but anyway. So, she's been working her way up. And I don't know how she was managing to make 105 or even 115 because being that I follow her so closely, I mean, like, I was watching the transformations, like, holy shit, like, she's shredded at 115 and 105. Like, I mean, I don't know how she's making it. So maybe it does make more sense, but she just does not have the strength to compete with somebody that's as good as Lemos. That's really all it is. It just comes down to that. And Lemos, 5-1 record in the UFC, 3 first-round finishes, insane, and then split decision win over Angela Hill there, which to me was a little bit bizarre because I don't really know how that was a split decision, but anyway, and lost her last one to Jessica Andrade, which makes sense. So I mean, we'll just throw that right out the window because Jessica Andrade, nothing like the Karate Hottie at all. Again, I'm a huge fan of the Karate Hottie, but there's really nothing heading in her direction whatsoever. Both of them thrive at strawweight, but only one of them has been finishing their opponents. And that should really tell you how good Lemos is and also how big she is for 115, because there's not a whole lot of finishes down there. And she got 3 in the first round. So that tells you all you need to know. And really actually almost finished Angela Hill in the first round. So yeah, I mean, I don't think this is going to be too good. Lemo struggled with Hill later in the fight, so maybe slows down a little bit. Plus, Hill always just never slows down. So like maybe if the third round Karate Hottie makes a comeback if it gets that far. But this is one of the rare situations where I'm calling for a finish in the women's division, especially with two people that are this good. But yeah, I just can't see it. I just can't see it. Lemos just shredding people in the first round. And I really do think that's going to happen again. I think Watterson should be able to hold on into the first round, but I don't know. I just think in the second round, we're going to see either a TKO or maybe even a submission. I don't know, something, but I just can't see it. I just really can't see it. I think Watterson's going to get pieced apart because, I mean, really, Watterson was getting pieced up by Hill, and Hill was finished almost by Lemos. In fact, she was so done that I would have actually, if I was the ref, I would have stopped it. That's how dominant it was in the first round. So to me, I think that's what we're going to see again. You're going to see a finish by Amanda Lemos again. And yeah, it's sad because, again, I love me some Michelle Watterson, but just not looking good for her this time. The main event. Oh, did I go into the odds? No, I did not. The odds, minus 334 for Lemos. Clear option for every single parlay. That's where we're going with that. Plus 260 for Watterson. No. Over under on this one. Over under 2.5. Oh, wow. Okay. So minus 220 is the over 2.5 right now. So like I said, I think Lemos is going to shred her apart and get a finish here. I really do. So, I mean, yeah, you could easily see a decision. We're talking about 2 very durable women, especially Watterson. She can take a beating. I mean, took it for 5 rounds against Hill. So, it's definitely plausible that we could see the over 2.5, but I really do think there's a very good chance to cash this in at under 2.5 at plus 166. So that's where I'm going with it. But yeah, the main event now. Finally, the main event. Brian Ortega, Yair Rodriguez. Oh my God, I can't wait for this fight. I love Ortega. Ortega is one of my favorite fighters. Rodriguez also very, very good. This is going to be so good to watch, especially 5 rounds of this. Oh my God. I don't think it's going to go all 5 though. I'm just putting that out there, and we will get into that in a couple seconds. But yeah, going into this, of course, Ortega's last fight, Volkanovski. We all know how that went. I mean, but it's interesting though, actually, because especially after what we just saw from Holloway, Holloway never really landed all that much in this last one to threaten Volkanovski, but Ortega kind of did. He was actually kind of, I mean, yeah, Volkanovski was shredding him apart, but Ortega landed some pretty good shots in there. He really did. He cut open Volkanovski. He landed some good shots. And then, of course, we all know he almost won on the ground with the guillotine. And actually, really, I don't think anybody knows how Volkanovski got out of that submission, because that was just insane. I mean, like, he clearly wasn't breathing, just flailing around, and somehow got out of it. I literally don't even know how he managed to get out of that. Nobody else that I've ever seen, like, nobody else on the planet, I don't think, could have gotten out of that. I mean, like, seriously, just unbelievable how Volkanovski got out of that. So yeah, that's Ortega on the one side. Also, very, very good against the zombie. But yeah, on the other side, Rodriguez won the Ultimate Fighter actually in 2014, gone on to grab a record of 7-2. So very, very good. And of course, lost his last bout, and that was to Holloway. And it was actually, I'm not going to lie, it was really close. Even when I was watching it, I was like, is Holloway going to lose this? Like, it was really close. Like, I don't know why people thought Holloway dominated Rodriguez. Like, he really didn't, though. Like, it was close. So that should really tell you. But there's a huge, huge difference in between the two of them, and it's pretty clear. And that's the wrestling of Ortega. I mean, it's just not even remotely close. And really, to tell you, just even in that aspect alone, how much Ortega has an advantage here. Like I said, Ortega literally was probably about 2 seconds away from grabbing the belt from Volkanovski. That is how good he is at wrestling. So he's got the submissions. Plus, of course, he's submitted so many other people. But Holloway actually out-wrestled Rodriguez. And Holloway is not a wrestler at all. So the fact that Rodriguez was actually being dominated on the ground by Holloway, I mean, yeah, like, Ortega's going, if this fight somehow hits the ground, which I think it will, Ortega is going to absolutely destroy Rodriguez. I do not think it's going to even be close when it hits the ground. Plus, I also think, and I think it's pretty clear, Ortega, I actually think he might even have maybe not an advantage on the feet, but it's close enough that it's very, very close on the feet. Because like I said, he was holding his own against Volkanovski. And if Volkanovski didn't grab a finish, ain't nobody going to grab a finish against Ortega. Not a chance, because his striking is also unbelievable. So, I really do think that with 5 rounds to work with, Ortega is going to grab a finish here. I really do. I don't know whether that's going to be later once actually, no. I do think I know what's going to happen here. The first round or two, we're going to see some crazy striking. We're going to love it. And then the third or fourth round, Rodriguez is going to start to slow down, because that he does slow down a little bit, and he's not going to be able to stop those takedowns anymore, because Holloway was taking him down in the I think it was the 4th round. and then third or fourth round. And then that is exactly when Ortega is going to take him down. He's going to get that submission locked in like he always does, and he's going to finish him. And that is how this is going to end. I really do think that Ortega is going to grab that finish and basically solidify himself as the number 3 contender. I mean, number 2 contender, I guess, because number 1, Holloway, number 2, Ortega. I don't think there's any other way you can put that, really. Yeah, at least right now. And I mean, then you've got Emmett, then you've got the other people. But yeah, anyway. So that's what I think is going to happen. And the odds are in favor of Ortega. They're minus 167 for Ortega, plus 136 for Rodriguez right now. Obviously going for Ortega on this one. As I said, I do think he's going to get the finish. And I will be putting that in a couple of the parlays at minus 167. The over-under is at 4.5 rounds, which makes sense because, as I've been saying quite a bit, none of the top 10 featherweights have been finished other than the Korean Zombie Volkanovski finishing the Korean Zombie. And that's the past few years. None of the featherweights have been finished. So the top 10 featherweights. So I could easily see that happening, another decision, but I've got to favor the odds actually in this one at minus 143 for the under 4.5. So they think there's going to be a finish. I think there's going to be a finish, and I think that's the way to go. Plus 110 for over 4.5. So, if you think that trend is going to continue, not crazy to go with the plus 110 for over, but yeah, I'm going with the under on this one for a finish for Ortega, and I can't wait. Man, that's going to be a good fight. We're going to talk about a few prelims, and then we will finally call it a night. It's a long one today, and I knew that was going to happen. Yeah. So, Bill Algeo and Herbert Burns is one that I think looks fantastic. It's looking real good on paper. Algeo came from the Contender Series. He actually lost on the Contender Series, but he made it back 2-2 against some pretty tough guys. Win over Spike Carlisle, and a tough but close loss to Ricardo Ramos. That was a tough one. And I mean, we know how good Ricardo Ramos is now. And then most recently won a tough fight against Joanderson Brito, who did just make his debut against Bill Algeo, but you got to realize how good Joanderson Brito actually is. So for him to beat him like that, in a decision like that, makes sense. On the other side, Herbert Burns hasn't really fought the same caliber of people, in my mind at least. Won a couple of first round wins in the UFC, but not against anybody really all that good at all. And then was dominated by Daniel Pineda in his last fight back in 2020. So to me, I mean, if you look at the odds, you might think Burns is, maybe the better pick here. But yeah, Algeo, I'm going with the odds here too. Algeo is, I would say, the fairly clear pick on this one. Yeah, he's just been fighting the better people. He lost to Ramos because Ramos is huge. I mean, he's massive for this division, and he struggled with the grappling of Ramos, who is very, very good. And even though he was controlled as a smaller fighter, the submission artist Ramos never even came close to getting a submission against Algeo. So that should tell you how good he is at defending them. And Burns, Algeo is going to have to shut down Burns and the submissions there and the takedowns. But I really do think he can do it, because if he can do it to Ramos, he can easily do it to Burns there. And Pineda, just like Algeo in his fights, actually shut down the grappling of Burns and took him and hit him quite a bit on the feet. So I think that I think that Algeo is going to do the exact same thing that Daniel Pineda did in Burns' last fight. He's going to shut that down, get his striking going, and yeah. What else was I going to say here? Oh yeah, and also, in Burns's fight against Dunham, he was actually wobbled bad and dropped him within the first minute. So, with those holes in the striking, plus Algio's skill set, I would say Algio is the clear pick here. Also, but I'm talking about this one because it is a very entertaining fight. Also, because Algio is one of those people that people have been talking about a lot recently. So yeah, minus 200 for Algio. I'm going towards that. Probably again going to include that in a parlay. Burns plus 160. The over under 2.5 rounds now. I actually do think this is going to go to a decision because Burns is still fairly tough. Algio also very tough, ends up in a lot of decisions. So I'm thinking this is probably going to end in a decision, and it's dead even on the odds pretty much. Minus 106 for over 2.5, minus 123 for under 2.5. I'm going with the over at minus 106. It's also just the better choice in terms of, because like I said, very close. Go with the one that with the underdog odds, let's say. I mean, it's not technically an underdog because it's not a plus number, but still minus 106. So yeah, that's what I'm going with that one. And this next one though, I cannot believe this is not on the main card. Seriously, one of the best matchups of the night. I cannot wait for this one. It is absolutely insane and pretty even, I would say. It's Ricky Simón and Jack Shore. Oh my God. I mean, this is a sensational matchup. And really, yeah, I think I know which way this is going to go, but it is very, very close. And it really could go either way. So, Simón, not really a household name, but he is ranked number 11th in the division with a 7-2 record. And he's got some pretty impressive wins over Montel Jackson, Merab, Dvalishvili, and Kelleher, and Asunciao. That right there should tell you how good Ricky Simón is. Montel Jackson, Merab Dvalishvili, who's number 4 in the division right now, Kelleher, who's pretty good, and Asunciao, who is also historically pretty good as well. And his only losses in the UFC have come to Uriah Faber and Rob Font. So again, very, very good guys. Shore, much newer to the UFC, but he is still undefeated at 16-0, which is why the odds do favor him. But I'm going to tell you why I don't really think that that's too fair. His only wins have come over Hunter Azure, Ludovic Sholinian, and Timur Valiev. And you know what? They're decent. But are they Merab? Are they Montel Jackson, Kelleher, Asunciao? No, they're not. And that is exactly why this is another fantastic opportunity for an underdog. And I will admit, Jack Shore, very good. And this is a little bit harder to win than the other underdog we had before, which was Li Jingliang. I think Li has a much better chance of winning, but I will say this really does favor Ricky Simón. What was I going to say here? Why Ricky Simón? I mean, the size is the most obvious part of it, because how Ricky Simón makes 135 blows my mind. I have literally no idea how he does it. He would actually be pretty big at 145. That is how big he is. He is insanely big at minus 135. So there's that already. So he's much bigger. Plus, he always uses that advantage too as well. He always uses insane strength and power to land huge kicks and huge takedowns, as well as out-grapple everybody. So Shore may be undefeated, but, his wins have actually been really, really close. And like I said, not necessarily that impressive competition especially compared to Simón. And in the split decision win that he has over Azure, who is very similar to Simone, by the way. Azure, very similar to Simone in that he's big and good at grappling. He was out grappled by Hunter Azure. So if you're out grappled by Hunter Azure, it's not going to be a good time when you're going against Ricky Simone, who is insanely good. Insanely good. And then most recently against Valiev, he was eventually taken down, controlled, and actually almost submitted by Valiev. Valiev and Hunter Azure are good. I'm not taking anything away from those two guys. They're also very good. But Simone is not just more skilled than both of those guys. He's also bigger than both of them and faster than both of them somehow, and also more skilled than them. So because of that, I really do think that Shore is going to have his first loss here. We're going to see Jack Shore's first loss. Ricky Simone is going to get that win and prove to everybody that he really is the real deal. You need to start respecting this guy. Because, I mean, I've seen this guy fight a few times now, and every single time I'm like, wow, this guy is good. Like, nobody talks about him, but he is so good. And everybody will be talking about Ricky Simone after this. That's what I think. Plus 130. So not crazy odds, but definitely the underdog. That is exactly who I'm going with this time. Jack Shore minus 160. Forget about it. Over under is at 2.5. So they're seeing a decision. I think that's pretty clear too. I don't see a finish. I mean, maybe Simone gets a submission here. I could see that. Like I said, Valiev did almost submit Shore, so it's possible. But I really do think you're probably seeing just a dominant decision win here. Minus 234 for over 2.5. Could throw that in a small parlay. But yeah, under plus 175. So yeah, Ricky Simone looking fantastic on this one. And I've got another underdog to close out the broadcast here. I will say maybe this is definitely the least likely underdog to win, but I gotta say, they're not giving him much of a chance on these odds, and I don't know why. I guess it's just the name. Puna Soriano minus 240 right now. I really don't think he deserves it. I really don't. This to me is very similar to what we saw with Tresean Gore and actually Ricky Tercios last week. I just don't think Soriano's that good. I just don't. I really don't think he's that good. That's what I'm seeing here. Two huge middleweights. They're both very big. And they're both looking for an early finish. Soriano was undefeated up until recently with a record of 8-0 and 7 first-round finishes. Sadly, after 2 first-round wins in the UFC, he's fallen with losses to Brendan Allen and Nick Maximov. Lungiambula, that's who's on the other side of this, has also lost his last 2 fights, falling to Cody Brundage, who we just talked about today, and Marc-Andre Barriault, who, by the way, both very good. And yes, Brendan Allen is good. Nick Maximov, average. The difference here, and the reason why I actually am going with the underdog, Dalcha Lungiambula, comes down to the stamina and also actually even the size, even though Puna is very big himself. Yeah, this one is very different, very difficult to predict, I would say. And it's really 50-50. I truly believe that. It's 50-50. Because Simone and Shore, it's unpredictable because both guys are very skilled. This one, very difficult to predict because I don't want to say they're not skilled, but they're definitely not consistent. They are not consistent at all, and they're definitely less skilled. So that makes it very hard to predict what's going to happen, which is another reason why you should probably be going with the underdog at this point. The difference to me is Lungiambula's, like I said, cardio and size. They're both huge for the division. There's no denying that whatsoever. But Dalcha is somehow bigger than that. He defies any kind of logic to how big he is. I mean, like, he doesn't even look real. I'm not even kidding. Like, you look at a picture of this guy or watch him fighting, he's got like bowling balls on his bicep. I mean, it's It's literally just perfectly round. It's like, and like there's just muscles bulging all over the. It's crazy to see. I've never seen anything like it. So he's a huge, but somehow he's actually faster and wilder with his striking than Puna, which is going to be a huge, huge problem. And what's actually insane is that Dalcha can carry that on for 3 full rounds. And Puna cannot do that. That is the difference. Before Brundage actually submitted him, because yeah, you look at the history. Yeah, he got submitted by Brundage, but you know what? Brundage was getting destroyed. He was getting annihilated before that submission. So, I mean, it came out of nowhere, too. I mean, Dalcha was way out. He was easily winning that one. And he was still, this was, I believe it was in the 3rd round, too. And he was doing very well. And he didn't slow down at all. He did not slow down. Oh, actually, no. I think that might have been the 1st or 2nd round. But yeah, when he was facing Barrio, though, still did not slow that down, kept that pace, even though he's insanely huge, all the way up until the final bell. Whereas Puna did not do that in his fight, not at all. He was, where did we go here? He's got the wrestling and he's got some decent striking, but he slows down quite a bit as the fight goes on. In the 2nd and 3rd round, slows down quite a bit. So to me, I mean, Lungiambula's got the size, he's got the power, and he's got the stamina. So what does that leave Puna with? Like maybe he's got some wrestling, but Dalcha's so big, I don't think you can do it. I don't think you can take him down. Like I don't think you can do it unless you surprise him like Brundage did, but I just don't think that Puna's capable of that. So yeah, I think the clear choice here really is Lungiambula. And if you look at the odds, -240. -240 for Soriano. Lungiambula +190. And we're going all in on Lungiambula on this one for sure. Yeah, I really, really do think he has huge advantages all over the place. And you know what? Yes, it's always possible. He could get very unlucky because honestly, I would say the only reason Lungiambula lost those fights is because he got really unlucky. That's really all it was. Brundage got pretty lucky. Brundage was getting destroyed and somehow won that fight. And even against Barrio, Lungiambula was doing really well. I mean, I wouldn't say that Barrio got lucky in winning that fight, but it was a rough fight. And I just don't think that Soriano can stand up to that. So we've got 3 underdogs, 3 huge underdogs we're going with. Oh, actually, there's another underdog I'm going with too, Jacoby. Jacoby's somehow an underdog. I don't know how. One of the best kickboxers in the world is an underdog to Da Jung. That's bizarre to me too. But anyway, we won't talk about that one. And we're done talking now. We're only going to talk about the parlays. We're going to be talking a little bit about the parlays here, just based on the odds. We'll go through it really quick. Oh, actually, I have another underdog too, Jessica Penne, +125. Wow, we've got a lot of underdogs. Oh my God, and Stoltzfus too? Wait, no. Did I pick Grant or Stoltzfus? I think I went with Stoltzfus on that. Or actually, no, maybe. Wow, we've got a lot of underdogs. We've got Penne, Stoltzfus, Jacoby, Simone. That's 4. Wow. Lungiambula is 5. Lee 6. Wow. Okay, I'm a little worried now. I've got 6 underdogs that I picked. Holy shit, that never that literally never happens. Wow, this could either be a really good week for me or a garbage week. This is gonna be iffy. But anyway, holy shit, that's not good. Anyway, we'll keep going with it. But you don't have to worry about those other picks. We didn't talk about them. We're just talking about these picks that we actually did work our way through. But yeah, oh yeah, anyway, the odds. Wow. Okay. So yeah, that makes these parlays a lot harder for sure. But I mean, well, actually, I guess it's pretty obvious then who the picks are going to be. Algio at -200, clear choice. obviously staying out of the way of Soriano because we're going Lungiambula. Tate is the second one in the parlay. Burgos, another clear choice in the parlay. Sumu Darji would be nice for a longer parlay. I wouldn't include him in all of them because I don't think he's that reliable because Schnell is so good. He's got a very good chance. And then Lemos, obviously another clear choice for a parlay, minus 334. And then I would even include Ortega in a lot of those parlays. So yeah, that's where we're going on this one. Great. You know what? Those are actually great, fantastic odds for parlays. I mean, normally when we do parlays, you're talking about all of them being in the minus 200, 300 range. But I mean, Ortega minus 167. Lemos, yes, she's minus 334. Burgos somehow a minus 172. That's fantastic. Tate minus 189. Those are fantastic. I mean, these are great odds. Minus 200 for Algio. These are great odds for parlays, seriously. But anyway, 2 hours and 20 minutes. Holy shit. Longest one I've done by far. I knew that was going to happen, though. And you know what? We're probably going to have this happen quite a bit now that the Contender Series is on. So anytime that I have BFL or Unified, any Canadian promotion on, we're going to have Contender Series, 2 UFC cards, and then whatever promotion we have. So those are going to be some long episodes. It's like I said, especially with the Contender Series, but you know, I've got everything covered for you. You don't need to worry about anything. I did all the research for you, laid it out all for you all here. There you go. That's all we've got. That's all we've got for today. Area 51 has you covered for all of the other sports. If you want to hear about news about any of the other sports, they've got you. That's linked below. All of my socials are linked below too. That's Instagram, all the different YouTubes, and Twitter. And I put my bonuses out on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to see who I pick for the bonuses, that's there. And of course, the odds, Bet99, talked about that already. If you want to get an instant sign-up bonus, the link for that is also below. Oh, I just realized we have a new site. We have a brand new website for Area 51, and I just realized that the link is for the old website. I'm gonna have to change those. Whoopsie daisy. I just realized that. I will have to write that down, and hopefully I will get around to doing that this weekend. But yes, you can still follow the link, though, to get the sign-up bonus for Area 51 on Bet99. Yeah. Thanks for watching, everybody. That's it. Next time, of course, we're going to be talking about UFC Long Island. Then we're going to be talking about UFC... Where is it going next? Is it Dallas? No, Dallas is the pay-per-view. There's one more UFC one before the pay-per-view. Where is it? Or no, it is the pay-per-view, isn't it? Oh, it is. Yeah, what am I talking about? We talked about this earlier. Yeah. We're going to be talking about UFC Long Island and the pay-per-view in Dallas. UFC 277, I believe we're at now. And then the last episode of The Ultimate Fighter. That is it. That is what we will be talking about next week. And then, of course, after that, we've got all the Contender Series stuff starting the week after that. But that is it for now. I'm starving. I want to have my dinner. I'm tired. It's hot in here. I'm thirsty. We're going. That's it for me. See you next time. Oh, whoops. I don't even have my outro yet. Here we go. There it is. And it will also talk about Bet99. I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.